I'm Paul, the Director of PVA Electrical and Renewables. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make off an armoured using my favourite tools to make life easier. So first off, we need to get this on. It's called a shroud, and that sits above the gland. So I'll show you how I do that using these tools. The easiest way I find is to put it on backwards, push down and you'll see a slight bulge, and then just go slightly below that bulge. Stretch it out over it so it's nice and tight. My pet hate is when they're really baggy and they fall down the cable. This is not the neatest cut on the end of here, but we should be able to twist like so. And then we slide that up. Leave that there for a minute. We need to put this part of the armoured gland and this part. So when you're putting this on, make sure that the thin side is facing whatever you're going to terminate into the gland. So there's a fat side, thin side. You want that pushing down that way. So you drop that into there, onto the cable, slide that up. And what you can do, just to keep it held in place like that, that's always going to want to fall down. So I would not take your glove to it. Just temporarily take that in position. Right, so next step, we need to mark the cable. We need to work out exactly where we're going to need to trim this and cut the armour in. So I line it up where I'd like it with a bit of flex on this one. And I've got this, the tracer with the yellow lead in it. I find this really handy, especially on the armours. You can get a nice clear mark. And then I'll show you the next tool. Right, so my next party piece is one of these. It's called a CK armour slice, and I find these really handy. I know a lot of people, they're a bit Marmite these, but I love them. Not so good on anything less than 2.5 mil. It just seems to get caught up in here, but anything bigger, I think they're brilliant. And I'll show you how they work. So we've got our mark. What you need to do is unscrew this, line this little blade, which is in here, up with your mark. Hold it in place and then tighten down. There's a spring in action in this, so when you hit it, it will sort of spring back a bit. And I tend to go a couple of turns on from there. So it's getting tighter now. There we go, springing on. So a couple of turns like that. And it gives you an indication which way you need to turn this. So then we're going to start to rotate. And I usually do, I don't know, around 10 turns. Turn it another 1.5 maybe. If you feel it's a bit tight, just loosen it off. Well, I don't know the exact amount that they say to do, but I just do it. You can kind of look in there and you'll see a groove, and you can get a good idea whether it's cutting through nicely or not. Just beware with this, you can over tighten it and you can go through the cable. So I think that looks good. So then it's just to loosen off. Pull away. That's what we're left with. A nice round clean cut all the way round. Now I'm going to show you my next tool. Right, so my next trick, the Jacari knife. They come in different sizes depending on the size of the cable that you want to use. This is the 8 to 28, which is ideal for a 16 mil 3-core armoured. So I'll show you how that works. It's basically got a small blade in there, and you can adjust it up and down, which is your plus and minus there. How it works, you set it to the required depth. I advise doing it on the end of the cable first, doing a bit of a dry run, because again, if you get that wrong, you can actually get that into the core and cause damage. So how it works, you wrap it round. I kind of prefer to put my thumb on there and push a little bit with my hand just to make sure it's going in. And you can kind of feel it slicing down. In this case you can hear it because it's on the armoury. Right, so I've used the Jacari knife and I'll show you how easily it should be now to strip this. Voila! Right, so the next stage is to get this steel wired armouring off of here. As you can see, we've got a nice neat score all the way around using the armoured slice. And I'll show you my top tip for getting this off. So with this end, a lot of people I see, they tend to pull a few of these off and unwind them and do them a couple at a time. I find that a bit of a ball ache. So what I tend to do, if you do that, get it bent like that. That gives you a bit of a handle. And as we twist, you twist the opposite way to what the cable, the armouring is attached basically. So then we want to, as we twist, we should hear a nice sound. And then as you look up this end, you'll see they've all pinged off in one bunch. And then we can literally slide them all off the cable. Ready for the next bit. Right, so the next part we need to do is take back some of this outer sheath here to allow this steel wired armouring to sit over the gland, and that is what we're going to bite down onto with the olive that I showed you earlier. So essentially what you want to do is not cut too much. Often I see this cut up here, and this is an outdoor gland. It's pretty much all I use even for indoor, but the idea is you shouldn't see any of this steel wired armouring out the top of the gland once it's tightened down. So you don't want to overdo it. I would say on this one you're probably looking about there. Every size cable is slightly different. Generally the smaller the cable, the shorter this will be because the glands are smaller. So what we do, just ring that. And I do it this way, do it away from yourself. And just go a bit gingerly that you don't cut into the cable. Fold that up. Just want to hook that bit. Generally once you start it, it should start coming. There we go. Right, so another little tip here, and I often see this one. So through the gland, we need to strip this essentially. This is what's going to be inside the board. This is where our cores up we need to get to. What I often see is this piece here cut too short, and then inside the gland, that can actually cause issues, because if you do have any nicks in the cable or anything like that, you could potentially be touching down to the body of the board and creating a fault that way. So best way, line it up, make sure you're going to clear out the bottom of the gland, just a little mark, and then strip that round, and then we'll strip this core as well. We'll show you that part in a second. All right, so now we're going to trim up the outer sheath. It looks like I'm doing this hard, but I'm actually not. It's quite gentle on here. Appreciate that the cores are inside this, so you've got to be very careful, but I just want to make sure I've got something there. What I tend to do then at this point is score it this way. Again, you can use a Jacari knife for this. This is a traditional way that I've always done it, so I'm going to do it that way to show you. So again, bearing in mind the cores are below, we're only scoring the first layer and not into the insulation of the cores below. Again, I'm not really applying much pressure here. It's hard to see on camera. and I'll show you how I do that in a second. So as we get to the bottom of the cable, I know that I'm not going to use all of this, so what I tend to do, that last little bit to the side, make sure no one's next to you and you're away from your body, just a harder one, just so I've got something to grab hold of. There we go. So this is getting cut off, and then the rest, these can be a bit of a pig. It's midwinter as well, which does not help, and we're on a cold building site. But once you get going, something like that, when you reach your score, so when you get to this point, it's just a case using your score, and there we go. Right, ready for glanding. Right, so now we're going to be attaching this part of the gland to this part of the gland whilst running the cable through. So what we need to do next is basically open these up. I see a lot of people twisting. In my opinion, that can damage the cable. I've seen that quite a bit. It really does mash this up sometimes if you do that. So I prefer to just open them up. Just open them up round enough. And it's important that they don't cross over. This doesn't look the prettiest doing it this way. It's not nice and rounded as much as the other way, but this part of the cable is not broken or damaged in any way. So again, yeah, if they cross over like that, just make sure that you uncross them. So you may have noticed I've now put tape on here. To be honest, I don't really know why I do that, but I've always done it. It's just one of those things someone showed me years ago, and I don't know why. Anyway, but that's there. I feel it just neatens this up, stops it splitting. So as you can see, these are opened up nicely. There's been no damage caused to the inner part there, which is what I often see. So we are now ready to pass this 16mm through here, and then I will show you how we tighten this gland up. So as it goes in, it's not always the easiest. With this bigger cables as well, you've got a little bit of room up above, and also you've got to be careful not to damage your cable here. So if you can push the pressure upwards, it will relieve the strain on this part. There we go. So now we can look at taking our tape back off of here, dropping the gland down, and I'll show you the tool that I use to tighten this up, because I think they're brilliant. So there we've got the olive, thin side facing towards the gland, because it's going to push over. It's not always the easiest, sometimes takes a bit of a wriggle, especially with bigger cable. When you get much bigger than this, 25s and above, it can be a bit of a struggle, but there's a bit of a technique to that. Essentially, drops down over there. I'm going to make sure this is all sitting nice and they're not twisted. Looks good. We can get this section back out of here. Easier said than done. I'll use my trusty screwdriver just to pop that down. Come out, you. Goes to show how much they grip. So that's down there. Make sure this top bit's loose. You see what I mean about the outdoor gland? That's this section here. When you've tightened this down and this gets tightened up, it closes up the gap there, so moisture can't get in. Again, it's a bit overkill for indoors, but it's all I use now. So you'll see, as you're pushing this down, it's pushing the olive over and it's pushing the steel wiring inwards. So once it pops over, be careful not to pull that out when you're doing it, but you'll know when that's in. That's a lovely bite on there. In come these. As you'll see, no marks left. I've used a banjo on this one, but you can use piranha nuts as well. Actually, I really do like the piranha nuts, but I haven't got any 25mm piranha nuts with me, so we're using a banjo. Again, when you get to the end, you'll know it should bite down quite nicely. It's approaching. Sometimes you get that creaking sound, just want to make sure it's not budging. Bottom, give that a bit more of a tighten. That's tight. You can check it by pulling up, making sure it's bitten in there. If you can hand tight something, I think that saves time to get you so far. And then back on the grips. Nearly there, so it's tightening down now. And now it'll just be closing up the gap at the top, creating a tight seal. And then the last thing is to pull the shroud back over. Excellent. We're going to bolt this through to the chassis next and through to the board, and then we are done. Right, so we've got the armour gland in position. The last thing to do, and this is important, we need to connect the banjo, which is the earthing part, to this metal board, and we do that with a bolt and nut. So another key point, actually, before I say that, so when you're doing these, screwing these down, basically you want to make a good contact with a metal, and as you can see on here, there's a layer of paint. That does actually stop a bit of the conductivity. So what you can do, if you look under here, you can scrape back the paint to give yourself a better surface. Some people do it on the outside, but I think that looks awful. And you just take a layer of the paint off. That's just for demonstrative purposes, but on here I actually leave a bit of the burr because I think it gives the same effect. When I tighten this down, it gives it something to bite to, and that will actually act as a good conductor as well. So if I just show you the tool I use for that. Right, so the next stage, we need to bolt the armour in, the banjo, to the metalwork. So spin that on. As I say, there's a bit of a burr in there. When this pulls down, it's going to bite into that and give it a good contact. There's a bit of a debate going on at the moment as to whether you need to fly lead from this point down to here to the earth bar. But in my opinion, I mean, there's not a fly lead between the earth bar and the incoming earth, and it's all metal. So as long as your continuity to check, you could test probe on there and test probe onto the earth bar and double check your continuity there. You're looking for a nice low reading, should be pretty close to 0 ohms. Another one of my favourite go-to tools, the mini ratchet. Excellent bit of kit. And then you just want to really make sure it's tightened down. You can feel it biting in now. It's good. Another piece of advice, I would add another nut just in case, to stop that slipping. Spring washers are also handy, especially if you're in an area with like high vibration. like a railway station or something like that. I'd use spring washers or split washers, they're also called. Right, and that's that. Right, I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you can like and subscribe, and come and follow us at PBA Electrical and Renewables Limited. Thank you very much.